Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Oh, hello there, everybody. Welcome once again to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're really thrilled to have you back on spring. It is spring. Spring has officially sprung. And the pollen is all up in Ryan and I's faces. So this is a pollen-filled episode of the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Hopefully
it's strange how you can't even escape the pollen just by staying locked up in your apartment.
That's true. That's true.
It still sort of affects you. That's annoying.
Yep. So I apologize ahead of time for any sneezes. If anything, it will prove once again that Ryan and I are real flesh and blood people and not the automatons that many think that we are.
Yeah.
Yes. So welcome. We have a fun little show. It is just Ryan and I once again. This week we have next week, to tease a little bit of next week, we have a fun show ahead of us where we're going international on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
Yeah.
Talking about some Australian films. That should be super fun.
With an Australian film insider in tow,
Yep.
plus our good buddy Michael. I don't think it's a spoiler alert to say that. If
Nope.
we're going to tease it, let's tee people up to come see it.
That's true.
It's an episode we've been looking forward to a while. But
That's
Michael
true, and I'll get to use this background again. Boom.
Nice.
And
yeah. Michael had to go do a movie or whatever.
Yep. So, but no, for now,
shows you where his priorities are.
Yeah, we take Michael away, and it's just Ryan and I.
Yep.
We are, so it's just gonna be a fun little show this week. We are mostly sort of focused on next week, and we're like, okay, let's what are we gonna do for the show this week? Well, let's just do some fun little stuff.
Yeah, let's throw some stuff in there and see what happens. So hopefully that ends up being fun.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, like we do with most shows, I get to ask Ryan, what sort of stuff have you been watching this week? What sort of fun, light, happy little movies have you been watching this week, Ryan?
I was inspired by something that I read on the internet someplace or something. I can't remember what, but I revisited a couple of films, one of which we've mentioned on here before and one of which we haven't. There's a filmmaker. He used to be an actor. He was on a TV show and stuff. He's in Twister. He's in Eyes Wide Shut, Todd Field. I think you may not know him by name, but I think you might recognize him as an actor if you saw him. He, like a lot of actors, he sort of branched out to do to shoot a movie, and like a lot of people shooting a small budget movie, kind of shot it in his hometown and at his own cabin, and you know what I mean, like used all this stuff that he knew really, really well. But it was a good script that went around Hollywood that got the attention of some really talented people. And it's a film called In the Bedroom, which I remember it from 2001. I saw it much later, almost 10 years later, almost for the first time.
Yeah, I would say,
because I remember the ads for it were just like Tom Wilkinson and Sissy Spacek screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And it looked like some sort of pretentious, family drama. It just didn't look like anything that would be remotely interesting to me. And which I don't know, I guess I like small remote family dramas, but something about that advertising that the Weinsteins put out there, it just was terrible. It was selling a movie that felt like it was just going to be unpleasant.
Yeah, that's what I
soap
remember
opera
about
dramatics.
it. That's what I remember about it. And then come award season, all the clips that were being shown, because it was up for especially a couple of the acting categories.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this sounds like no fun at all.
Well, it is no fun. To be
Really,
fair,
but I mean, yes, you're right. It is no fun. It is amazing. It is a really fantastic piece of cinema.
That's exactly right. It's a movie that sneaks up on you in this incredible kind of way, especially if you go into it thinking it's going to be what I thought it was going to be. But it just in general, you don't see. I mean, there's all kinds of people making all kinds of subtle, modest films out there. We talked about Loose a couple of weeks ago. I think that qualifies. They're these films that are simple, have a sort of simple kernel of an idea that nonetheless, however they're executed, sort of get under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And this is In the Bedroom is definitely one of them. We can't really talk about it without spoiling it. All I can say is that it is a rough go. It really, really does challenge you and make you feel uneasy, but in such a great way, in a way that's compelling and that's deeply human. I already said Tom Wilkinson and Sissy Spacek. Tom Wilkinson's New England accent is stunning. Even the people from New England were like, they can't believe he's not born and raised there. It's so authentic and incredible. Yeah. So we tease people for their accents sometimes. He really, really nailed that one. And then on a different level of storytelling, there's Marissa Tomei, who's just amazing in it, and Nick Stahl, and Tom Cruise's cousin. What's his name?
William Mapother.
Who's also, I think, I don't know how great an actor William Mapother is, but he's a surprising guy. He does interesting things.
He does interesting things. He
really does.
If you don't know William Mapother, off of the name, you probably saw him in Lost. He's very
memorable in Lost.
He's just always pops up in things. He's just a really terrific character actor. That
usually a more of a bit player, but every once in a while he gets a role like this where he gets something to bite off and chew,
he's got a really punchable face. It's like, you immediately look at him and you're like, I don't like that dude. I don't like him. And he probably is a great guy in real life, but he brings a certain
he almost energy, certainly is a great guy in real life, because the way people talk about him and deal with him, and the way directors use him again and again.
You don't work that often if you're not a good person. Yeah, if you're not a good guy.
Right.
But he really does. He brings a certain untrustworthiness to the roles that he plays. I remember that from Lost. You're watching him and you're like, nope, there's something about that dude.
Something about that guy.
He's going to come back to, stab you in the back.
And even in his turns as trustworthy, emotionally rich characters, that you not wanting to fully buy into him is becomes an exercise in you getting to know somebody then that you admire in a surprising way. So he's hardly the star of this film, but he's worth mentioning because all those qualities come to bear here. And it's 2001. It's the first time in a feature film where he does some pretty heavy hitters. Suddenly he's surrounded by, and he's not just thug number 2 or airplane terrorist number 4
Tom Cruise's
all those weird roles
that Tom was throwing a bone to.
Exactly. He's really, really good. It's an really important role, and he really does well. Obviously Wilkinson and Spacek are world class. So, and it's fun to see Nick Stahl. He kind of plays he's very broad these days and doesn't get some of the best parts, but he was first seen in Mel Gibson's Man Without a Face, which he sort of carries that movie himself. and he was in Terminator 3 and some other things. He's gives a pretty subtle, believable performance in that too. My least favorite Terminator movie, but Nick's an actor that could have been good if Hollywood or audiences would have embraced him a little bit more.
Right.
He feels a little like he's also he's like a lot of these list of guys that are able to just be a total psychotic on screen, and that's because he can do that. He gets cast that way a lot these days. But I generally like him. So, and Marissa Tomei also. We shouldn't leave without.
Yeah,
since
no,
we're
this
going
was
through this ensemble.
From what I remember, I'm quick flipping through her filmography here. This was like the, you had, she won the Academy Award for My Cousin Vinny, which comedic part and everything. But now this was kind of the start of you need to take of her doing some more serious turns, more expanding her.
Yeah, it's surprising. She's just it isn't. I think if you watch this now, if you've never seen it, at the time though, it was a surprising turn by her because it just really not. It's not to type really.
No, you're absolutely
right. She definitely had one for a while there.
So yeah, and again, credit to Todd Fields for.
Just envisioning all those people in this way. The film's full of interesting metaphor and poetry. I don't want to sell it as some hoity-toity pretentious film because it's really just a base sort of small town thriller.
It's a family drama, really. I mean, it's
mixed. It has elements of a real suspense movie with real.
Sure, yeah.
It's a little bit of both.
Hard watch. It is a hard watch because there's a lot of difficult emotions that the movie brings brings along. We're trying to not spoil it. I mean, in case
it isn't a crowd pleasing movie. That is what it comes down to. I don't know. People can take different levels of stuff, but it really does poke and prod at you, and it tries to keep you off your guard emotionally, and it does just a brilliant job of that.
Yeah.
And his second film, and he's only made two, In the Bedroom in 2001 and this film in 2006, which we mentioned back in our 2006 Love-a-thon. If you go back,
that's
maybe
right.
Don't go back and listen to that. I don't know, or maybe do. It's up to you, but.
Well, everyone should want to listen to our show multiple times.
That was where we just listed all the movies of 2006.
Because it was a bonkers year, yeah.
Basically gave a thumbs up, thumbs down to them real quick and just flew through them. But with the intention that we would come back and reevaluate. And this is a chance to do that because we're not going to do top 5 Todd Fields films because there's only 2. He's got another one he's working on that's in development, but he's had a different one all these years he'd been working on too that was in development that got scrapped. So he doesn't make movies for streaming services and stuff. Like he's a bit of a man out of time now. He was in the early 2000s, but he truly is now, in my opinion. So we'll see. But his second movie was Little Children. Which
another hilarious romp
in a really stacked year of fantastic movies is right up there at the top with the best of them. It's really, really, really strong movie. It's based on a novel, I think, that I might find intolerable because it's really this examination of these little emotional crises that all these middle-aged suburban couples are having, basically, which to me is a novel I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. I just wouldn't. I mean, that idea is like, whatever, but that, because I think typically we don't get to do a project like that without really being judgmental about people. I think every chance to do some suburban, domestic drama / suspense film is like we just judge people. Look at the people in suburbia, or you and me, we're just as bad as anybody, or they're always weighted down with some sort of something, some sort of statement that it's trying to make, which I always find really pedantic and terrible. But this film, it has that actually, so it doesn't set itself apart completely, but at the same time, it's very much like In the Bedroom, where its moves throughout the narrative are different, and they don't they I don't know how they surprise you. In the Bedroom's got a couple of big surprises in it.
Yeah.
This film doesn't so much, as much as it just travels this unexpected path, which is really keeps you sort of engaged, because you're not sure what you're looking at.
Right.
And I don't know that you're a lot more certain when it's over, honestly.
Yeah, and
people are scared is really what it is.
Yeah.
And
well, and it's
they act that out in the worst ways sometimes.
Right. It's that what happens when you are really when you feel empty and unfulfilled, but it's like, is there a way out of that feeling, or what is that, and how do you rediscover being alive in in that sort of when you're feeling just the banality of day-to-day stuff, in lesser, I think in lesser hands, Todd Field included, but in some of these the performances, especially Kate Winslet. If you don't have,
Winslet had seen In the Bedroom and was basically beaten down Field's door saying, whatever you do next.
Yeah.
She did that thing where you reach out and says, I just saw this. I kind of can't believe what I just experienced. And whatever that is, I want to be a part of that next time. So he did. He was like, great.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have Kate Winslet, and then he surrounds Kate Winslet with, you have Jennifer Connelly, who's also awesome.
Yeah.
But in terms of the men that are around her, stage actor, Todd Field casts these, two stage actors that were, primarily known for musical theater, frankly.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, so they're not known. They certainly weren't known. Patrick Wilson has kind of gone on and now has had a really solid film career.
You bet.
But he certainly hadn't at that point.
Yep.
And he
in a way, it's really neat, because it's what we often see in reverse, just from a stunt casting standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You usually have the two big guys who are stars, and the women are like, let's pluck them off the street, or let's have 100, casting call of every 1,000, young women in Hollywood. They really like doing that to women in a way they don't. It's not. It certainly happens with men, but it's not quite the same. It's like a lot of things in life. It's not really on an equitable level. They really do like discovering the hot starlet. This is that in reverse. Jennifer Connelly was in the midst of a bunch of Oscar nominations. Kate Winslet was nominated for this film, in fact.
Yeah.
So they were the hot actors, really. And Wilson, and who's the ex-cop in it? He's fantastic in it.
The ex-cop is
my favorite.
Noah Emmerich.
Noah Emmerich, who's again, maybe you don't know his name, but I promise you, if you saw Noah, you would know him. Yep. Noah Emmerich is, to give you a sort of populist appearance of his, he's Truman's best friend in the Truman Show.
Yep.
And he's great as the next door neighbor / best friend he is the opposite of William Apather, in that he's just very trustworthy and very, which is why he's so great in Truman Show, because he's a complete tool of the system who you just believe. And even when he's lying right to his face, still feels like he has Truman's best interest at heart. Because he has that warm jock buddy from high school sort of feel to him. And he's great. He was great in The Russians on
the
TNT
Americans,
or whatever. The Americans, with the K.
Yeah.
But they were actually Russian spies. Sorry, spoiler alert. You find that out in the first episode. But The Americans, thank you for that correction. He's just awesome. He's a really, really good actor. And this role is it's different. He's still that guy, but his insecurities are so intense, and it just, again, in a lesser film that would be annoying. I would hate that sort of over the top approach to stuff. But there's this great scene where Patrick, there's affairs going on and things like that, and we won't get into the details of those. We'll let you discover them themselves. But I'm sure, as you can imagine, the fidelity plays a big part in the film, even though it ends up being less of a big part than you think when the thing is over. That stuff seems like a side dish, really, to what was really happening in the story. But there's this great scene where Patrick Wilson and Noah Emmerich play this pickup football game out in the park at night, or on the high school football field. Just, it's supposed to be touch football, but because they're all because they're not in pads or anything, but because they're a bunch of macho guys, they beat the crap out of each other, just like we used to play in the backyard. You tackled people. It didn't matter. You didn't have a helmet on. And Wilson does this. I feel like it's almost deliberate this way. He makes this impossible, could only happen in the movies, football play to win this game. Like, it's just like, that's not even fake.
Yeah.
Backyard football. That doesn't make any sense, but it's great. It's shot in this heroic, sort of crazy, over the top way. And Emmerich's so excited, and they're all going out to the bar, but somebody that Wilson's interested in, like, shows up, walks over to him, and they're clearly going off to rut together.
Yeah.
And and Emmerich's like, "Well, come out," or whatever. And he's like, "Yeah, maybe in a bit." But what he means is, no chance in hell I'm going with this attractive woman. Yeah. Like, you're a guy, you're supposed to get this. And there's these shots. It's this cross-cut bunch of sequences. The film juggles a bunch of different narratives kind of brilliantly, and he keeps moving uneasily through them all throughout the story. There's this shot of Emmerich at the restaurant while the restaurant thins out, while his crowd goes away, until he's finally sitting on the sidewalk outside the closed bar, thinking his friend is still going to come visit him. And he's already this broken guy, and this just cracks him in half in a way. It's so weird.
Yep.
It's such a little, desperate, pathetic thing. But Emmerich imbues the dude with such humanity that you feel it. Instead of getting a laugh out of it, you feel increasingly sadder and more empathetic for him. And the movie's just full of stuff like that. It's so well-rounded. It feels like James L. Brooks, and like, these are more demonstratively emotional films, but he made Terms of Endearment. That was his first movie, and his second movie was Broadcast News, which is a perfect movie. And then he did, like, I Love Trouble, and he's really made nothing but crap since. Like, he had this signature style, and it was like, holy Moses, this is the guy. Like, this is a new guy that's going to make only brilliant movies forever, and he hasn't made a brilliant movie since. And Fields, his legend's only grown because instead of making disappointing movies since, he hasn't made any movies.
Right.
He feels like a guy who, if he can't do it, he makes them modest enough that Hollywood really should just let him go. If they believe in the thing, you don't have to have tons of movies about what color so-and-so's cape is or whatever, because it's not that kind of movie.
Right.
So he should be left alone, but he's had a hard time getting his dream projects off the ground. And he feels like a dude who isn't going to make a movie unless he can make it his own way.
Right.
So I don't know where that leaves us with him. I guess the other guy we really should mention before just moving on, without stating too much about it, in Little Children is
Jackie Earle Haley.
Jackie Earle Haley, who's a pretty famous actor now. He had the weird distinction of being a relatively famous actor then, but he hadn't acted in something like 13 years.
Well, sure. I mean, he was a kid star.
Right. But a kid star in several things.
Yeah.
Most famously, Bad News Bears, but he was
regarded as, wow, one of those kid actors who you're like, wow, this kid is, he wasn't trading on precociousness.
Right.
He was trading on the fact that he clearly was building characters and punching above a kid's weight.
Even in Bad News Bears, his most signature child role, he plays the the motorcycle riding, rebellious 15-year-old who you never know what he's going to do.
And then he goes away for, as I'm looking at his filmography here, it's about 13 years between a film here before, he's in Maniac Cop 3 Badge of Silence in 1993.
Yeah.
And then comes back and Todd Field gives him this.
He ran his course to a career that led itself to Maniac Cop sequels.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I don't know if he just couldn't get jobs anymore, or he gave up, or he kind of gave up because he couldn't get decent jobs anymore. Some sort of petering out of his career. Happens to a lot of people. So I don't know. Fields isn't the kind of guy who does a lot of interviews or a lot of commentaries. I've never heard Jackie. Jackie's the kind of guy who does, but I've never heard his take on this. Because he's nothing like the dude in the novel, who's kind of like James Gandolfini, if type of person.
Sure. Yeah.
His presence in that movie and that role and the way that story is told it's Joel says unpleasant. It really is, but it just knocks your socks off. It's just just an incredible reemerging from the shadows of an actor. It's hard for me to think of another one that quite has the same impact, And then he showed up in all the Kingsman and Watchmen and a whole bunch of other things.
Semi-pro.
Yeah. And he's great. He's fun.
Yeah.
He's fun. But this is his. He was nominated for an Oscar for it, rightly so. And this is his. I hate to say it, but it's his signature role because. The meeting of so many sort of perfect elements, and his style and his sort of a matter-of-fact style of acting helps the story in ways that are just wonderful. And he's got a weird look. He looks like somebody you recognize, but he doesn't look like he looks when he's a kid, and he doesn't have the same or even a young man, he doesn't have the same reaction on you either. It's a different, unnerving sort of reaction, and it's a visionary choice to use him in this.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's pivotal. It's the fulcrum role upon which the whole thing sort of moves. No offense to Connolly and Winslet, who really are the stars in a very real way. They really are the focus of the story. We sort of talked about all these guys, but.
No, we talked about these guys because the guys are less known. Kate Winslet and Jennifer Connelly,
top of their game.
Kind of when they're above title. When you see their name above title, you know that there's going to be some multi-layered, three-dimensional characters being brought to life here. They're two of the finest actors that there are. In my opinion.
And they're in that late 30s, early 40s age range there, whatever, mid 40s. Like they're perfectly refined.
And this is them at the absolute top,
operating at the highest level of their careers. So it's
absolutely. So so you clearly were enjoying some camp, some lighthearted romp through filmdom. It's hard to
I just wanted to, call your attention that this guy has a way of working. There's a way of storytelling going on here, and you may resent it a little bit if you've never seen these or you watch these because we told you to, because it does come at you in a way that Kate Winslet said, "I've never felt so uneasy as watching a movie as in the bedroom," and I just wanted to be, for whatever reason, as a person in the industry, it made me desperately want to be a part of that, to give somebody else that sort of emotional experience that I had. Yeah. And, so she wouldn't be the first choice for this part at all. She's brilliant in it because she's Kate Winslet, but if you were just left to your own devices, you could think right over her as well. She wouldn't do it because the character leaves a lot of dignity on the floor in the film. All these characters do, frankly. It's brave and bold, and
it's hard to say to our listeners, you got to go out and see this. You got to see, because these are hard movies to watch. They're not,
but at the same time, they're they're not weird art house films that are told in a weird way. They're very easy to digest.
Emotionally, they are hard to.
Emotionally, they're tough.
To put your, to want to gear yourself up on like a Saturday evening to want to watch these things. But if you have the opportunity, don't shy away from these movies because they really are. They're really terrific movies. I saw Little Children not too long ago. Again, I haven't seen In the Bedroom for a very long time, but I saw Little Children again, and it's unpleasant. It's icky, but altogether wonderful, and a wonderful story. There's wonderful storytelling going on.
They're really good. I give them. I mean, I looked before the show. I sort of did a little reading about them, and I gave them both 9s.
Yeah,
they're considered sort of 7.1 movies because they weren't made for everybody. They really weren't made for. They're hard R, adult, very thematically rich films, and that isn't what we head out, like Joel said, to the Cineplex and plop our money down, But In the Bedroom has the distinction of being the highest grossing film that was never in America's box office top 10.
The highest grossing film was never in America's top 10
box office.
Oh, you mean
for any week of its existence?
Oh, I'm with you now. Yeah. Sorry, I'm with you now. I was confused.
Or any day of its existence.
Yeah.
There are other movies that don't qualify for that are like science movies or IMAX movies that have really long runs.
Yeah.
But it's the only dramatic Hollywood film as we think of it that just sort of ran for so long in so many art house theaters and was seen by so many people outside of America's mainstream that it has that distinction as making the studio a bunch of, not a ton of money because it's not that kind of movie, but making it a bunch of money, a profitable film that was never part of the national conversation.
Yeah.
And Little Children debuted a little higher because it had a little hotter stars at the time and some other things, but it also was like some gangbuster hit in 2006.
They're slow burn movies that rely on word of mouth. They rely on other people, and they rely on critics. A movie like those would rely on critics to say this is a movie that's worth your while if you get a chance and you're looking for something different, if you're looking for something challenging.
I really couldn't agree more. The critic bringing clarity to films like that is kind of what critics are for. Critics are kind of, in today's film, culture, critics are useless. Films, good or bad, are what Joel calls critic proof. And I think that's, that doesn't mean that they don't get ripped on, because they totally do. It just means that you can say what you want. You can like Solo Star Wars story, for example, but if there's some other narrative being built collectively somewhere in the Twitterverse, your opinion means nothing. And it works the same way in reverse. You can really not like
Thor Ragnarok,
right?
But it's
good choice. And it doesn't, if people giggled and laughed at it and it sold a bunch of popcorn, then it's not, you're not going to put much of a dent in people's opinions about it. So these are films where the critical conversation, like we hope maybe we had a little bit today. Sorry to keep running on and on about what did you watch this week, but I feel like
it's the kind of show we have this week.
I feel like we won't circle back to these. So
that's true. That's true. These two movies, they're not likely to show up far.
I don't know what list they could appear on. It's kind of that kind of thing. It's like, and that's good. The fact that they're list proof is a feather in their cap. It's a thing that recommends them. They're tough. They're very much of a piece, the two of them together, but they're very, very much a different thing. And if you complain that everything's the same or whatever, you don't have to travel. It's 20 years old now, In the Bedroom, but you don't have to travel too far back. You don't have to go back to the mid 70s to find something that's different. These are really, really great.
Yeah.
So Todd, whatever you're up to, man, we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. Whenever he does put out another project, and
he didn't really act anymore either, so he's kind of
He's just he's let's just hope he's stewing. Let's hope that whatever he's doing, he's marinating it. It's all getting marinated, and it's gonna be terrific when we see it.
He's shooting some weird like detective type mystery that takes place in 1910 and stars Daniel Craig. But they haven't started making it yet, which makes me think that could just evaporate at any time.
Yeah.
But when you read I did a very bad job because I don't have the synopsis in front of me. When you read the little what they know it's about, mixed with the star and the fact that the kind of material he's done before, it perks you up and gets you excited. So, or Daniel Craig, we call him Mr. Rachel Weisz on the show, don't we?
I angrily refer to him as that.
He was on Stephen Colbert, for the last Bond movie, and he's like, I don't understand. My wife came on here and she had all this gift packages and all these things, and she was apparently we were chatting and she was in some other totally different room that's like all more luxurious than the green room I was in.
Yeah.
He's like, so what's the deal? I'm a pretty big star. What's going on? And Stephen Colbert's like, I like her better than you.
Yeah.
In his classic sort of, and Craig's gets the joke and is like, okay, that explains it all.
Yeah.
After his big rant. We love Daniel Craig, but we really love Rachel Weisz. We're like Colbert.
Here,
Did you find it?
He's going to do a film set in the Mexican Revolution starring Leonardo DiCaprio. A coming of age minor league baseball story set in the 70s Northwest.
I didn't see any of these. Where are you?
I'm just on Wikipedia.
Oh, I went to Internet Movie Database.
He reported that Franzen's novel Purity was in the process of being adapted. That's the one that would star Daniel Craig. That would be a 20-hour series on Showtime.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's the most.
So if we even see any of those at any point, because all he's been doing is working on projects, writing scripts, and developing things that have not been made into movies. So
yeah.
So don't get too excited. But with just a shout out to Todd, he's he was a reliable but as sort of generic side actor as there was during that era, and as an original storyteller behind the camera and in the scripting process, he is a stunning talent.
Yeah, I'm just looking at
couldn't admire more.
Yeah, he did a lot.
That's not to say he was a bad actor. He's cute and Twister, and he's good in Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah,
he's good in the stuff that he's in that's good. But you always feel there's something else going on with him, which is always a fun thing as an actor to be. But he found his calling when he went to the other side of the camera. In my opinion, he's exceptional in that work. So
excellent.
So how about you? Do you watch anything as cool as that?
I did not. My big watch this past week. My son was on spring break this week, so it was exhausting. So it was just lots of hanging out, lots of watching videos of iconic German polka master James Last. We watched a lot of that because that's what the kind of stuff my son's into. And Dyson just came out with a brand new vacuum that features a laser to illuminate dust. So that is the kind of thing that I watched a lot this week. I did watch a documentary about the Last Blockbuster from a couple years ago. And chronicling,
meaning the Blockbuster, the video
store chain, chronicling the rise and fall of the Blockbuster video chain, and the missteps along the early successes and then the big missteps that Blockbuster made, that ultimately led to every single one of them closing, down to 3 in Alaska and 1 in Bend, Oregon. And then the 3 in Alaska closed, and now they're just down to 1. And
they had a lot of terrible business model decisions that they made, but it really wasn't those even that ran them out of business, right? It was just people stopped going to video stores for
Well,
DVDs
yeah, I mean,
and such.
I mean, the kind of, according to the documentary, the common thought is,
It's
well,
not like some other video chain
no,
rose in
it
the
was,
ashes and thrived.
yeah, it was,
They
it
all
was,
died
it was the,
basically.
it was the, the conventional thinking, and and this obviously plays a big part of it, is the rise of Netflix and streaming services and everybody
Right.
getting into that. However, the big thing that did it was that recession in 2008, because Viacom had bought Blockbuster, uh, and was essentially using Blockbuster's money. The kids at that time, Blockbuster was just a money printer,
Mhm.
and they were using that, all of Blockbuster's funds, to pay off all of their other debts from all of the other properties that Viacom owned,
Which were
and then
extensive.
which were extensive.
Yeah.
And so
And
then,
still are. Viacom
yeah,
still owns Paramount technically, and
yeah,
Paramount's functioned as a distributor for independently financed films for the last few years, but it outside of the, and even these have been pushed on to other companies, but outside of the Mission Impossible films, like that, they've produced very, very little
right.
actual movie making. So
And yeah, and so then when streaming came about, and and then there's a very famous story of Netflix came to Blockbuster very, very early on and said, "Hey, would you want to buy us for like $60 million?" And Blockbuster laughed them out of the room.
well,
Uh,
Blockbuster, that's kind of good because Blockbuster would have, Netflix, they've done some things
mhm.
wrong throughout the years too that we tease them about, but Netflix,
Yeah, who knows what kind of, what
in
would
the
have ended
hands of the
up.
people running Blockbuster, may not be what it is today
Right.
at all. So it's probably, we're probably fortunate for that.
Yeah. And so so there was so there was that story, and but this one in Bend, Oregon has survived because it's a franchise. They had just simply franchised the name, which
And
was
then kept the name,
and
which, yeah.
kept the
So
name, and
when the
the
corporation
name
fell, you still had this little
yep,
owned, privately owned.
the name Blockbuster is still owned by Dish Network. And so that's one of the subplots of the film, is they're, at the time of this documentary, they're in their final year of the agreement with Dish Network to let them use the Blockbuster name, and they're like, what happens if we lose? Because Dish Network still owns Blockbuster, and Blockbuster still has and Dish Network has these connections. That's how they're able to sort of still continue with some of the some of the prices they're able to get on films, and the amount of DVDs they're able to, or Blu-rays they're able to get, and games, things like that. So they're still able to use that Blockbuster and Dish Network mostly name to be able to get things. But so if they lose that, what happens? And it's essentially this one woman that has kept the Blockbuster alive, and she's like, she's like a mom to every teenager in town, because every teenager has worked at that Blockbuster at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really charming. It's lovely. It's filled with 80s and 90s nostalgia, and
We like
2000s
that.
nostalgia.
Yeah.
Just sort of chronicling how we all used to watch films, and how the video store was an integral part of our social lives.
I do miss video stores, even though I tried to avoid them every way I could.
Yeah.
They were lively places, they were like bars or restaurants. When you would drive by one, the lights were always on, even at 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
There were always people milling about inside. Like, they brought a neighborhood to life in a weird way.
Yeah. And it was the kind
At
of place
their
where
absence, you really do feel like this is a colder, darker place now,
yeah, and it's that, in that idea, in the dating scene, it was the kind of thing where, that's how couples could sort of quickly, in a shorthand, get to know each other.
Right.
Let's go rent a movie.
It was that era's version of the going to the bookstore and have things to talk about everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So so it's a charming movie. It's it was really well done. It was lovely. And Yeah, and that is on. What did I watch that on? Shoot, was that on? That might have been on Amazon Prime, or that might have been on Hulu.
Shouldn't be hard for you folks.
Shouldn't be hard to find. Yeah, shouldn't be hard to find. But yeah, that was that. So that's really kind of the only movie.
The Last Blockbuster.
The Last Blockbuster. And of course, watching things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and some of these continuing series that we'll talk about at some point.
At some point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't watched those. I haven't watched WandaVision yet, which I was really excited about, but I just haven't been able to bring myself to do it. Haven't watched Kong versus Godzilla. I haven't watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. I just haven't. That's not at all the kind of thing I've been in the mood for.
Right, and I mentioned this to Ryan. I'm very much.
We should get with it, Joel. Joel, we should get with it. We should start watching Godzilla, and we should have YouTube previews where Godzilla's over here and Kong's over here, and I'm in the middle going.
We could do that,
and everyone will click on us then, because right now people are like, I don't want to listen to these obnoxious know-it-alls talk about in the bedroom 20 years ago. Screw this.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll do two pictures. We'll do one of Kong and Godzilla and Ryan in the middle going, I don't know. And then we'll do another one of Tom Wilkinson and Sissy Spacek and Ryan going,
see which one gets the most clicks.
See which one gets the most clicks. That's we'll
the kind of videos I'm talking about, though. These critics aren't even all terrible, but we're no better. We're like them. We're just these homemade. We decided to be internet movie critics, all of a sudden in our 40s. So I'm not being too judgmental, but I swear to God that it's sometimes just that look at the pop culture jumping out of the screen at you.
Well, you and I chose the
and they're all set up like, what's this guy whose name I can't remember and who I don't know personally gonna say about Godzilla?
Right.
To me, that just rings false. There's no excitement in that, and so we're not that, unfortunately.
Yeah, you and I also chose the always successful business model of sort of critiquing and discussing films that are like 20 years old.
Sorry.
So, that's
not always, but
not always, but that's
but we do take a historical perspective.
We are more, we
talk about that, and maybe we'll talk about that a little more on the show, why that happens. And
I will say, dear listener, I did watch the Zack Snyder Justice League. I hope Ryan gets a chance to watch it sometime in the next month, because there are some things
next month. That's harsh.
Well, no, puts
a lot of pressure on me.
I just mean whenever you get around to it.
It's so 4 hours.
And talk about it, because and
I've already seen it twice it sucks for him.
Yeah. Well, it's a very different film, and
I'm sure.
that's the point, right? Exciting to talk about.
I promise I'll watch that just in time for it to be completely not topical anymore.
And then we'll follow that up, of course, with Godzilla versus Kong versus Godzilla.
You could insist, fans. There could be thousands of you, and
do you really want the movie show to take on Zack Snyder? Yeah, you could
demand I watch that, but nobody's doing that, so it's tough to get me off my horse when nobody's
here's the deal,
anywhere in sight pushing me to do this or that.
Here's the deal, my friends that are listeners right now. Ryan is tough but fair. If you come back and you say, Ryan, watch the Snyder Cut, we want your thoughts. If you reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram, or the Ask Joel and Ryan at gmail.com, or on YouTube here at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on YouTube, you can certainly say, Ryan, watch the Snyder Cut. I want to hear you guys talk about it. Hey, Ryan, that will bump it up in the priority list for Ryan. We're
not talking to you, Rob. I'm not watching all your weird things from olden times.
We only mean the Snyder Cut. We don't mean any.
No, we mean all kinds of things, but I just didn't want to give him full hope.
Yeah, Rob right now is like, oh my God, he's flipping through his Rolodex. Aha, Ryan.
I just didn't. I feel bad. I didn't want
to. We love you, Rob, and we can't wait to have you back on the show.
We couldn't love you more.
Yeah. All right. So this show this week, we also we knew we were going to talk about Todd Field and the hilarity of everything that involves. But we sort of thought we would just do another. I honestly don't know, because I haven't really been paying attention, maybe wrongly, to the feedback from it. But a couple weeks ago, we debuted a new feature.
At least one person got into a big discussion about it, the details, the jokes, said that she thought it was really, really fun, and that we love that sort of response. So
yeah. So
I believe that was a personal friend of mine. So I don't know if it counts, but I'm just saying that segment, you're getting to what it is, but that was very popular, at least amongst one.
We did also hear from your mother, and your mother thought that one of your answers was very funny.
Nice. I didn't know my mom listened to the show.
I think your mom does from time to time.
She's a big supporter of it. She does what I say. She likes it and shares it, but I didn't know that she actually listened to it.
Well, she did. At least she did that episode because maybe
she knew part of it.
Yeah. All right. So so we're gonna do. So we're just gonna explore some of our fun little games.
That's my favorite joke on Blackish, by the way.
Is what?
Is their kid, like the young boy on the show, the teenage boy or whatever. He's probably an adult now. I haven't watched that show in a while, but he quits his job or whatever, and he's wasting all his time, and he's like, he goes, I have a podcast. It has 2 subscribers, and it's Ross, his mom, goes, so 1 subscriber, honey. I'm sorry, I unsubscribed. and his reaction is, okay.
Yeah, that tracks.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it is.
It has 2 subscribers. He does the.
Love it.
They get the joke on that show when it's a gag. They do it perfectly. So
yep. All right, so we're just gonna do some of our fun little games, and of course the first one on that one means that I get to play this again.
What should I do?
What do you do?
What do you do?
I don't know.
What do you do?
What do you do?
What should I do?
I don't know.
What do you do?
What do you do?
I don't know. What do you do?
I don't know. What do you do?
What do you do? Seriously, what should I do?
I don't know. Maybe this one?
All right, so we're gonna do a little what do you do?
Fun. I recommend all of you who are listening to the audio version of this, even if you don't have time for us on video, you head over to YouTube at around sort of 47 something minutes in the show, 45 minutes or so, and check out the graphics that Joel made for that. What do you do audio segment? They're worth watching several times, but you gotta every fan of the show has to see them at least once. So
they're fun to do. It's that's how I nerd out and spend.
I enjoy it very much. I'm mostly responsible for the audio hits you hear on the show. That one is a Joel Listman exclusive special, and it delights me because it's great. It's right in line with the tone I think we've worked so hard to cultivate here.
Yes, and again, not to pat each other's backs too much, but that is what every time Ryan came up with one of these sounders for when we had an idea for a little game section or whatever discussion section, he would send them to me, and I would just laugh giddily, and we would the messages. So the fact that I got to do one and he enjoyed it seemingly as much as I enjoyed the ones that he has made brought me great joy. So first off,
what do you do?
Okay, so Ryan, my dear friend, you are I know that you're having a hard time getting back out there after your most recent breakup, and you need a pep talk from your sassy romantic comedy best friend. Who are you turning to? Becky, Rosie O'Donnell's character from Sleepless in Seattle? Goose, Anthony Edwards from Top Gun? Fat Amy, Rebel Wilson from Pitch Perfect? Semi, Arsenio Hall's character in Coming to America? Or Freddie Bauer, John Candy's character in Splash?
Good gravy.
Who's going to give you that pep talk to get back out there?
Can I have Victor Garber from Sleepless in Seattle instead?
So you can talk about
So we can really talk, and I don't have to just sit there while these other parade of clowns bark at me about this or that. I can't. I know the answer to that already. That was rhetorical, Joel. I
Yep.
know I can't just pick my own answers. So Rosie O'Donnell, she's in the running, honestly, which I would,
Yep.
when you started, I was like, oh, nope, not that one. But when you got to the end of this list, I was like, oh, Rosie's looking pretty good. You know,
Yep.
So it's,
You got Freddie.
I feel like Anthony's too jingoistic for my taste. I don't think I would respond well to that sort of sports like military kind of pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do admire him a great deal, and rest in peace, Goose. We love you. We really appreciate how much shorter you were than Tim Robbins. I know Tom Cruise appreciated that as well. So
good. Yes, we have Becky,
Fatty. Who's that? Leave after that. Sorry, Rebel
Semi,
Wilson.
Arsenio
No.
Hall's Semi.
No.
Coming to America, and Freddie Bauer.
Freddie, you know, I tell you, we
Whiplash.
talked about this on the John Candy countdown, top 10 John Candy performances. I'm actually going to pick Freddie because I would find him obnoxious, and he would, but you know, he's the kind of guy who might get me out of my shell a little bit. And I'm telling you, when it comes time for him to actually give his brother advice on what to do, I mean, he nails it. I mean, he sticks the landing in a major way. So with respect to Rosie O'Donnell, who really was in the running right here until I kind of thought about Splash a little bit more, I'm gonna go with Freddie for sure. And you know,
I got to tell you, I think you have the right answer. You would have had the right answer with Freddie or Becky.
Oh, good.
I think so, because you would have because really in this list, as I go through the list, Becky and Freddie are really the only ones who truly do put their friend's interest at the forefront in their advice. The others tend to give advice that is a little bit more self-serving. So
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that is true.
Sadly, as I was putting it together, I was really getting deep into this as I was trying to figure out what rom-com best friends I wanted to put in here, because there are a gajillion rom-com best friends out there.
Well, and Top Gun, and some of these aren't even rom-coms.
Yeah, but sure.
But I get what you're saying. There's this great question, and I'm going to ruin it because I don't remember the couple, but it's one of those, if you could have a date with any couple, living or dead or whatever, who would you choose? And it's all, you know, people, it's one of those stupid questions, which I would have a hard time.
It's one of those things where you have to go,
what do you do?
Yeah.
Which is fun, but it's fun for me because you gave me a list there that I could work my way through. It's very tricky when you're trying to just
pull out of the ether, yeah.
But it was a comedian who did this, but he was joking, but he did it in this sincere way. He picked a couple where one of the people is living and one of the people is dead, and the reason he gave was because he thought that the person living would really appreciate it. And I was floored by that answer, not just in how clever it is, but the sort of just nice, altruistic way you answer this weird, dumb celebrity quiz question. I wish I could remember who the people were. I can't. And I can think of a couple that might fit that bill, but saying them feels distasteful. So that was another thing. He made that joke while picking the exact right two people that you would feel good about and not gross about. So hats off to that guy, whoever you are.
I have to say,
impressive.
This is a little bit of a tangent. I do some work for the Williams Syndrome Association, and we were having a sort of a workshop weekend a couple weekends ago, and and there's regional people from all over the country, and we're all on obviously over Zoom and stuff. And our coordinator running the whole thing, she's like, she would, intersperse these little icebreaker things or just some things to sort of loosen everybody up in a way for all of us to get to know each other better. And she was asking questions like that. It's like, if you could have dinner with any 3 other people, who would you have? And people are like, oh gosh. And I'm like, I know. And then I would reel off my people. And then, it would go on and there would be another question. And I would, and I knew my answers. And they said, how do you have all of your answers? Like you clearly, and I'm like, I have a podcast and this is what we do.
This is what we do.
This is how my lizard brain works. So
last tangent, we talked about Colbert earlier. He has this segment where he brings on celebrities and they lie on the grass and look up at the stars and ask each other these weird questions. And he asked Tom Hanks that once when they were doing that. He's like, if you could meet with any famous person, living or dead, which would you choose? And Tom Hanks's answer was, oh, living. Which I thought was pretty
That's
classic.
solid. That's a solid bit. All right, one more.
What do you do?
They're like, living, definitely living.
Definitely living. That's solid joke right there. All right, so Ryan, your talents, your skills have been compared to Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders. Just the amount of skill, the talent you have. Now the pundits need to know, where are you bringing your talents? To the New York Knights from the movie The Natural, the Miami Sharks from Any Given Sunday, AFC Richmond from Ted Lasso, the Washington Sentinels from The Replacement, the Flint Tropics from Semi-Pro, or the Charlestown Chiefs from Slapshot. What fictional team?
The Chiefs.
You're gonna play hockey for the Chiefs?
Oh yeah, that's where I belong. And we can talk through these so that isn't just a one-word answer. The point of these is to drag the show out a little bit. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. Don't give away the.
It's not just picking Chiefs and moving on to the next.
Chiefs. End of story. Don't even ask me
I love Slapshot. Me and my buddy Bill Felberg, we were talking about this the other day, and he quizzes me like this all the time and stuff. And he was super pissed, in fact, that we left not pissed, but he was surprised that we left Dark Water out of our Oscar discussion. But I told him it's actually part of the big finish of the year in review. So it's there. The love is there. It's just in a different spot than you thought. Since Oscar wise, it wasn't out of the running, but it wasn't a big part of that part of the year. So he's like, what we talk about Bad News Bears a lot. We just talked about it on the show. I told back in my baseball episode, our top baseball, which is like our second episode, I think.
Yeah.
I call that not just my favorite baseball movie, but my favorite sports movie of all time. And the only movie that can follow Bad News Bears in a sports movie double feature is Slapshot. In fact, it's the perfect movie to follow it. It was the perfect drive-in sports movie evening. And if you've never seen either of those, again, I'm not talking about Billy Bob Thornton, Bad News Bears, and I'm not talking about Bad News Bears Go to Japan or whatever sort of made for TV crap came after. The actual Bad News Bears with Walter Matthau and Slapshot with Paul Newman and crew. I love those films. Zany, fun movies that put you in the late 70s in a way that they're made then. So of course it's easy for them to do that. But even some of those films like have this, they sort of skirt around the times a little bit. Those films just nail it. Yeah. So I love those. If you haven't seen them, watch them. If you want to watch them with me, look me up. We'll watch them together anytime. Unlike Zack Snyder's Justice League, I do not have to get geared up to watch those at any day of the year. They're summer movies, but any day of the year is fine. So what were the other ones? They all sucked, basically. The Knights. That'd be neat. Although the Knights, I have to say, And it's one of the annoying things about The Natural, and I don't know if this is from the novel or this is just a simplistic way Hollywood breaks it down, but the Knights can't win a game without Robert Redford,
Right.
and they can't lose with him. And it feels like that should be more nuancedly handled in that script. I really don't want to be one of the Knights that's not The Natural, that is just sucks without him, or is just some comical sidekick. Michael Madsen aside, who's great in it. The rest of those guys are just they're just guys, you know.
Also the Knights have shady ownership. So
they do.
That would make it difficult.
They do, but they got a coach you want to win for, and they got the greatest assistant coach really of all time in sports. In what's his face? Forgot his name.
I don't remember that actor's name either. But yeah,
he's great. He was Oscar nominated for The Straight Story, and he was in.
I want to say Farnsworth is his last name.
Farnsworth, that's right. Must be Richard
Farnsworth. Okay.
Thank you. All I could think was Foxworth, and I'm like, that isn't right.
I was like, oh god, if I
Good
say,
job, Joel.
I try not to like throw out
Richard Farnsworth, the late Richard Farnsworth, national.
Because if you know, I had Farnsworth in my head, but I'm like, if I say it out loud, that's literally all. I won't be able to move on from it if I'm wrong.
You were right.
And so, all right, Miami Sharks, of course.
No way, no chance.
Yeah, no.
Go watch. I mean, or don't. I don't know. It's up to you. If you've seen that movie, you know why. No, I don't want to be around any of those people. No, thank you.
No surprise to anyone who knows me. Of course, I would choose to play for AFC Richmond, and Ted Lasso as my coach. Playing soccer in England, in the Premier.
Just to be part of the feel-good story of the century, you know. Anything to be that. So I get it. That makes good sense.
And Ted Lasso is the kind of coach that doesn't make you won't you know you will be as good of a player as you choose to be, but Ted Lasso, he will make you a better human. He'll make you a better person.
And what could be better than that?
Yeah, Washington Sentinels. That was the
winner on your list until you got to you hit Slapshot, and there's just no that's. Can't you see me all dressed up in the Chiefs uniform and with a black eye and a bandage on my head?
Yep.
Playing without a helmet, just being the team's enforcer.
Mm-hmm. And even younger Ryan, like if you still had like the flowing mullet.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Just
yes.
the flow.
Well, I assume it's younger
or
Ryan.
in college when you sort of had the whole long hair.
I was sort of like a Bo Jackson. I was a double threat. I sucked equally at two different sports.
That's true. Yeah, and there's something to be said for that.
Yep.
And of course the Flint Tropics, led by Jackie Moon.
What's that again?
Playing basketball and yeah. With Coffee Black, and So, so the Charlestown Chiefs, hard to argue with the Charlestown Chiefs. All right, so that's going to do it for What Do You Do?
What do you do?
But I do have...
Let's get some hot takes.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes.
Okay. Every movie should have a post-credit scene. Is my hot take.
No
if
movie
no other reason
post-credit scene. When the movie's over, the movie should be over. Those post-credit scenes are stupid.
Every movie should have a post-credit scene, if for no other reason than to keep people in their seats so that they see just how many people it takes to make a movie.
That's not a good enough reason.
Okay.
If you're waiting to the end to see Robert Downey Jr. tell some sort of fart joke, then it's not the same as caring about who made the movie. Things don't go together whatsoever. So if they did, I'd say, sure, I get what you're saying, but I don't think it's a valid argument, but I don't think it's a winning
you
one.
You don't think that you could like kind of trick people into caring?
Well, I used to like Easter eggs, they used to be these moments, or you would hear, at the end of Aliens in '86, you hear the alien sort of run behind you in stereo.
Yeah.
At the end of the mission, there's this picture where the guy who's basically narrating the mission, this priest from the Vatican, just sort of he's been writing a letter back to the Pope the whole movie. And when he's done with the letter, he does the sort of, the folding and the stamp, and they cut to him at the end of the credits, and then he looks up and he actually breaks the fourth wall and looks at the camera, and then boom, it goes black. And it's cool. It's like it's this tag on the end of a film.
Yeah.
But that's not what these are. These are just little bits of stupid advertising. They suck. I hate them. and I really don't like them. At the end of your credits proper or whatever, you want to give a tease to the next movie, but at the end of your 11 minutes or whatever, to just have some asinine, stupid thing. I am not a fan of that at all. Not one bit. Not in the slightest. And I just feel like it just sort of is an open admission to the lack of integrity in your storytelling.
Okay.
You just a hype machine for the next big piece of crap. That's all you are. I hate that.
All right. So the next one.
Let's get some hot takes.
It's kind of a somber answer to a fun question.
This next one is the hot takes sort of infringing upon another feature that we like to do on this show. Mm-hmm. But the hot take is the trend now in Hollywood. So this could have been I'm trying not. I sent the trend tracker out of the room, so the trend tracker wouldn't hear this.
Right. It wouldn't feel like hot takes was treading on its turf.
Yeah, because I'm afraid that the trend.
We try and keep all of our show modules separate and happy. That's the best way to do it.
The trend in Hollywood right now is there is no trend. The vast amount of broadcasting options available mean that there isn't a reliability on exploiting a trend, and then as soon as a trend starts to emerge, niche programming allows, nay demands, that the trend be bucked.
I don't know really. I don't think Hollywood can help itself. And it's been a few years now, but think of the young adult films, for example, and how many, I don't know, there's plenty of them that were hits, but how many young adult series were started with a big first film to launch the thing, and then that's the only ever film that they made from that series. Right. It's dozens and dozens of them, and to the point that they were getting pretty good at the end of that trend at making them in a way that where they were betting hardcore that they wouldn't get to make another one. So they would sort of, they would change the ending somewhat to make it feel like a self-contained thing instead of a launching pad for something else. Mm-hmm. A lot of movies do feel like that. A lot of movies feel like this is the start of a big franchise, and then the franchise never comes. And that's the sign of people desperately following trends, whether it's extended universe trends or whatever it is. We're still totally hip deep in that, of everybody copying that style and trying to get their piece of that. But it is true that niche entertainment, like you can put a young entertainment novel, even not a famous one that isn't even very good, and if you get the right vibe, you can stick that on Netflix, record 10 episodes, and it doesn't even have to be a monster hit to keep going and going and going. And that's cool, because I wish there was more of that, although young adult stuff appeals less and less to me. We got young adult segments coming. We got Hunger Games deep dives coming, and Harry Potter episodes, which we've never done one. All that's all. We got that all over here for a rainy day. Those are all coming. So just so you know, I don't diss on those. We can actually talk about some of that material, but is it diminished somewhat in streaming? Yeah, but it's still trends that people are following. Even when you get down to the niches, you're still trying to copy some version of what the big guns are firing out at Disney or wherever. So I feel like, no, that's a long, complicated answer too, but I feel like it hasn't changed that much, and it's not gonna. The way we get content is kind of evolving like crazy. And so there's some business models that are different, but I still feel at a core way, when you're in it for the money, and these, you don't make Avengers Endgame to not make $2 billion. And if you don't make $2 billion, it's considered a complete and utter failure. It on that level, it's all about just giving everybody what they want, giving them what they want, give them that end credit scene, give them all this dumb, whatever. It has to appeal to the least common denominator. And it has, from an artistic standpoint, you still have a couple of guys sitting in a lonely writer's room who have to come up with the next big, massive thing. You got to find the right guys to do that, to bring any sort of storytelling integrity to it. So it works both ways. It's not like they're big empty vessels. A couple of these movies are, but not many of the Marvel movies are. They're all pretty good.
Sure.
So but it's Hollywood still chasing its tail.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it totally is. There's no more, and to the point that there's nothing anymore. I mean, there aren't going to be any more pirate movies. There aren't more jungle adventures. I mean, every once in a while these come up, but they're these anomalous throwbacks. They're not making event films that aren't either big espionage films. And we've talked about Mission Impossible movies on here. Those are as huge and amazing stunt-based action films as exist, but they're not about anything, dude. You try, or the Bond movies for that matter. Explain the plot of them to somebody. Like really talk about what happens and why. It's like, what? It doesn't matter. It's just get on the stuff even works emotionally on you in storytelling ways, but it really is, get on the motorcycle, get on the hovercraft, jump out of the helicopter. It's just stuff to hang that stuff on.
Yeah.
But, not everybody can do it.
Right.
Not everybody can do it.
Right.
So,
Right.
I don't know. That I sort of went on.
No, we didn't. No, we weren't talking about you.
Sorry. Shh.
Yeah. Well, no, you just head back out. Okay. Oh, I think it heard me say.
Uh-oh.
Try. Ooh. Okay.
You're in trouble.
That's gonna be an awkward conversation later. All right. One more thing here.
I have a question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who gave you the right to play God, Joel?
Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you!
What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
Might as well play the whole thing.
I do love it so.
It is good. All right. So you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about little children and in the bedroom, you had ranked them. I think you had said you had given them
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. So you do an out of 10. Out of 10. How many? Like how often do you?
I'll work within whatever ranking system you put ahead of me, but left to my own devices, it's out of 10. 9 out of it's so on a 10 scale.
So you have and as we have mentioned many times on this show, a considerable movie collection. A vast, if people who are watching this on video, you see his CD collection, but that's a portion of his music collection. The movie collection that he has is that as well. You would only be seeing a portion of a very extensive movie collection as well. So have you? I'm assuming then, and knowing you the way I do, you probably have gone through and ranked and given ratings to, not ranked, given ratings though to all of those films that you own.
Yeah, I don't know about all of them, but I do in certain places. I do rate stuff. Yeah,
sure.
We're somewhat religiously, to remind myself of stuff and to see how my opinions change and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
My favorite place to rank stuff, even though I'm not a big fan of this place anymore, it's kind of changed for the worse, but is the Internet Movie Database. And because it has all the movies, which a lot of these other places don't have all of them. They just have whatever they're pimping at that time. And B, it shares my ranking system. It's a 10-star system. So I like 10 stars because it allows for nuance. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Netflix sucks. I mean,
that is hard.
Having to choose when everything's so mediocre in the world. I mean, everything is really so middle of the road. We live in a world where it's 10 stars, best movie ever, or 1 star, worst movie ever. That's sort of the discourse. It's pass fail. If you pass, I love you, and if you fail, I hate you. And there's movies they're 5s and 7s, and that's mostly what they are. That's sometimes that's as good as you can do under the circumstances. Honestly, there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
but I like a scale that allows for that, and I like a scale that where you're not just, it's not just 4 stars for a quarter of the movies you see, you know. So that some excellent, perfect piece of American drama and some pretty good whatever gets the same rating just because percentage wise that's how it has to break down. That's why I love 10 stars. I don't give 10 stars out.
I was
That's
gonna
the
say,
other reason it's fun. I don't give 10 stars out very
Do you know
often.
how many times, like, and you know, let's say you have you probably have rated what, easily over 1,000 films.
According to Internet Movie Data, it's more like 4,000 and change.
Well, there you go. How many times have you given a 10-star rating?
I don't have it right in front of me, but it's like 50 sometimes.
Okay. Wow. So not very often. Do you remember the last time that you gave a?
Yes, I do, because it's been a while actually. The only there's a few more movies I think back in the aughts that I gave tens to, but the since 2010 to present, I've only given out 2 10-star ratings. To first to 12 Years a Slave and then to Whiplash.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, both.
That could change though, Joel. And this goes to your.
Well, and that's part of, yeah. I mean,
this goes to your earlier point, like what, you know, why do you rate things from the past? Why are you talking about things from 2001? Time changes the way you appreciate something, and if you really did appreciate it, it increases the way you appreciate it sometimes. So, you know, there are some of these films from this era where if I put a little time in between, I revisit them and have a really strong reaction to it, they could come up from 8 or 9 to 10. It's possible.
Right.
I just, you know, it's a music snob thing, which I'm not a music snob, despite the love of music. I don't rank music. I don't like music award shows the way I sort of enjoy movie award shows. I find music to be not a competition, and I feel like it's really diminished by being one, in a way that movies are kind of inherently a bit of a competition. You know what I mean? Because it's not, the competition's not about the quality of the movie. It's about how many faces you've got the movie in front of. That's what we talk about these things on that level. So, you know, I find that fun. But yeah, so there could be more. There might very well be more. There have been a lot of good movies lately, but even 9s are getting pretty rare. I'm just getting stodgy in that way, where it's like you want 10 out of 10. I got 10 stars to play with. If you want all 10, I mean, you just gotta nail it.
Yep.
Your movie has to be a few combination of things. It's got to be really perfectly done, which a lot of movies actually are. But more than that, it has to really be, there's got to be a storytelling ambition to it that makes it worthy of being an all-time 10 out of 10 star thing. And obviously 12 Years a Slave is just a total trial by combat of a film, in terms of kind of like the ones we were talking about earlier a little bit, although the historical weight of it and all these other things that are brought down on it, it is an interpersonal story. It's a one man's journey sort of story, but it has that weight and power of history, and this idea of ringing true, and the fact that it comes at the history of slavery in America from the standpoint of somebody who was free and clear of all that and tricked and sold back into slavery, so that our journey with him is experiencing a lot of the precepts of that for the first time.
Yeah.
It's a stunner of a movie. It just really is incredible. And it's sort of unimpeachably good. You know, the only criticism I've ever heard levied at it that make any sense, and even this isn't fair, is Brad Pitt plays sort of a white guy who's could be cast somewhat as a white savior character in the show. He comes along and is the dude who finally gets the word about this guy out to a lawyer and gets us headed towards something of an ending that we can live with and not just feel completely gutted. But, you know, Brad Pitt produced that film. I mean, he got that movie made. That's a Plan B entertainment movie. It's the main studio behind it. And when he was asked, well, first of all, why are you in it? You're not important. It's not even an important role. And why did you cast yourself in such an important role? Like it was this asinine question. And he's like, the reason I cast myself in the movies, I thought it might get the movie more attention, and we really wanted the movie to succeed and to be seen. So it was you're right. It was a small part. It was a little amount of work that I could easily do, fit in my schedule, and yet my name amongst this other, Fassbender, Cumberbatch, all these white guys that are in the movie, Paul Giamatti, who are all fantastic. You don't watch the movie going, wow, the white guys are great. I mean, that's not on your mind at all. You're so sucked into this film, and it's Chiwetel Ejiofor he's the central character, and he's everything.
Yeah.
He's everything. You want to play a slave owner in a movie. I mean, that's a choice you're making where your whole life for a few months,
right?
If you're Fassbender or whomever, is the things that come out of Paul Giamatti's mouth. He's a slave seller, basically. He's the slave barker.
Yeah.
And it's not like you see where they're out in this giant slave bazaar. They're in a little room, in a little, in the back room of a storefront, and there's like 3 of them there, and they're just completely talking about them like they're objects. And there's a guy who, buys a mother and not a 10-year-old daughter when they get separated, and his sort of, I hate this when this happens. That sort of just brutal, just to get inside the head of that is amazing. But it's Chiwetel that carries that film, right? Is this what you wanted me to do? Talk about these movies? Sorry. Whoops.
No, I mean, well, well, 12 Years a Slave. I mean, I would agree with
it's
you.
It's kind of like Todd Field, and when are we going to talk about that? Those Oscars have passed, and I feel like, when are we going to talk about that? I don't know.
Right.
So let's talk about it.
Whiplash. I mean, I loved Whiplash. I'm trying to think, would I give Whiplash a 10 out of 10? I don't know that I would give it a 10 out of 10. I don't know, but boy, yeah, Whiplash was great too.
Whiplash, there's no other movie like it in the world. I don't think there ever will be. And it was the best movie of that year by a country mile. I know there were other great movies that came out that were, and I get that Whiplash is not what 12 Years a Slave is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the weight of history. In fact, the whole thing feels agonizingly pointless. Like there's nothing that can come out of what happens in Whiplash, and nothing really good does. But it's just perfection. You can put whatever action movie or whatever spy thriller or anything you want in front of me, any horror movie that's intense or whatever, and there was no stronger white knuckle. I'm feeling my lungs come up into my throat movie than Whiplash. The whole movie, I was just sitting here as this ball of tension. I mean,
yeah,
I consider it magical that it was able to do that to me, that a movie was able to do that to me, especially after all these years when I get so analytical and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, I felt like I held my breath for the whole film. It's just incredible.
That is a really good point. Yeah, it was really
so to me
fun.
It's like a one of a kind physical and emotional experience. That's why.
Yeah, I could buy that. Yeah. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying, I wonder if I would give it.
Not everybody would. I think if you don't have that reaction to it, it's just kind of a tough, rough movie to sit through. You know what I mean? If you can't buy into it. But I think the movie, I think people who watch it, and I think it was a small movie. It was not expected to win a bunch of Oscars or anything. It did win. It's a handful. It's incredible.
It was so fun to see, J.K. Simmons, who we've seen in a gajillion things, and he's just so unbelievably good in Whiplash.
We live in a culture now where if you do something like he did for even a few seconds, your life is over. I mean, the parents are calling. It's not a thing that I think. I'm not saying there aren't people like that. I'm just saying that sort of sustained. We're seeing this just from Hollywood directors now, and we're seeing. Not to get into a cancel culture debate, I don't want to do that at all. Maybe that's a show if we can tread it lightly enough on it. I don't know. But we are seeing guys who are they directed a movie and it's not like they abused anybody or they just were mean to people because they have big egos and they're jerks. And that's true of filmmakers going, back forever, and it's true of half of them working now. And I kind of feel like we've gone a little too far when that's the threshold that we're holding. This guy in Whiplash he's just a devil. He's a demon. He's a demon, not the devil. He's really this guy put on earth to torture, to just wring out every bit of life in you that you have. And his whole altruistic idea that he's going to create this super being, this ultimate musician is going to come out of this thing if I just keep doing this, seems laughable.
Yeah.
And it seems like even if it happens, it's not worth it. This much cruelty and abuse isn't something anyone should subject themselves to, and isn't something anybody should be a part of. But it is like you said, the actors are so good, and it's more than that. There's more than that going on. If it were just that, it'd be tough. It's this chess match between these two characters in a weird way. We're both using dramatically different tools. We've
seen some of the plot points in Whiplash done in sports movies, right? With the abusive coach that feels like they need to be as abusive as possible in order to get the best out of their players.
Boot camp movies with sergeants that are just all up at you.
But like especially in sports movies, there's a crowd cheering you on. There's these moments of, oh yeah, maybe it was worth it all. You never, I don't think you don't really ever get that in Whiplash, where, it's like, oh yeah, all that abuse was worth it. Way to go. He would have never been that good had he not been so brutally abused.
Right. It's just another part of Whiplash's brilliance. Without getting to what happens at the end, the actual events, it culminates in a big play, big finish, last minute win sort of sequence where you don't feel the least bit victorious as an audience member, even though it does put you through those paces. That exact structure is there. It doesn't do the cheap thing of fulfilling this terrible equation that it's set up from the beginning. And if it does, it still makes you question everything that you've witnessed up until that point. I really do believe Whiplash is perfection on screen. It's for everybody, but
it's a hell of a movie.
It's a young man who wants to be the greatest jazz drummer ever. He goes to the greatest musician school that you can get in, and he gets to be a part of the small jazz ensemble that's considered the best amateur version of that in the country, with a legendary conductor and teacher. And that teacher just happens to be one of the most evil people that ever lived. And is that something you can fight against? Or if you bend to it, is that something you can remain human at the end of everything? Is there some line you can walk in between? It asks all these questions, and it presents all these attempts to deal with that sort of force of nature, a hurricane right in the practice room with you.
You know what it does?
How do you deal with that? It's amazing to me.
It makes you ask,
what should I do?
It does.
What do you do?
Right?
What do you do?
So Joel, that is why I love Whiplash.
Is why it's those kinds of emotions.
And we should mention a couple of people. Miles Teller, who's a
J.K. Simmons,
chick who plays
Paul
Supergirl.
Reiser.
She's pretty great in it too. I can't remember her name.
Oh yeah, who is?
She's just Supergirl now, so that's too bad, because she was in a handful of movies during that time where you're like, wow, you're gonna be something special. Not that Supergirl is not special, but
it is.
She's great in it.
Melissa Benoist.
Melissa Benoist, right? And doesn't Kevin Pollak play his dad?
Paul Reiser.
Paul Reiser does. Sorry, I get those guys mixed up a little bit. They're similar.
Paul
Reiser's really good at it too.
It was one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, Paul Reiser, he is capable. When he's asked to do some work, he can do it. When he's asked to,
And shout out to the atmosphere on the set and the way that, because everybody else in the film virtually is nobody and yet nothing in the movie happens, not much anyway, one-on-one. It's all happening in a crowd with an audience, with people who are sitting there all day in the emotional moment, with a lot of these other musicians who have these bit roles who have to nail it, or you start to take the power away if you're not right there when you have to be, when they cut to you, or when you saying one of your two lines, you've got to rise to the level of all that.
Yeah.
So it's JK's show. I don't think there's any question, but Teller, who gets teased a little bit for this or that, without him, I don't.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't just have to be all that stuff that's really, really hard to do as an actor. He also has to be something approaching a believable world-class percussionist, which he also is in the movie.
Yeah.
So Miles goes there, if you're going to ask him to play a boxer, he's going to show up knowing something about boxing and really killing it.
Sure.
Even if the story is not that great, here you've got the perfect cocktail of fantastic performances, great writing, perfect direction, and kind of one of a kind tale that despite it being torturous to me, I still, once a year, I'm still like, Whiplash, yeah,
nice, wow,
let's do it. And I its power really doesn't diminish on repeatedly watchings, I have to say.
Well, very cool. All right, well, folks, that is going to do it for us. I think that's as good a place to leave it as any. Like
Can't follow Whiplash, that's true.
Yeah. Once again, we have I think we have a super fun show ready for you next week, with talking about some of the cinema of Australia, and we look forward to bringing that to you next week, and we are.
Don't worry, it's a bunch of old stuff.
Yeah, and we thank you.
No new stuff. All late 70s and early 80s when we were 10 years old.
Oh, yeah. So we thank you for joining us this week for this fun little excursion. And and we will see you all next week on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.